So today I wanted to talk about that idea that we control our reality, that our belief systems, define what we go through. And I love that idea. It's so powerful. It gives us so much agency. It is also kind of challenging though sometimes because when our realities are not that great, or that we're going through something challenging, sometimes we can be like, what are we doing wrong? And that's actually what I want to talk about today because I sometimes have conflicting views about that. But the idea is the one, you know what I'm talking about. It's like basically that the universe will reflect back to you what you believe. So the universe always wants you to be right, and it will just mirror back to you your beliefs. So let's say you have the belief that life is hard or that people are bad. Well, then the universe is going to reflect back that to you, and then you will actually be able to be right in your experience. And similarly, if you believe that people are good and that life is easy or that it has a way of working itself out, then that is going to be your experience. And what's interesting about that is that in the end, both of the experiences are true. It's not like the world actually changes. Both of them can be true at the same time. And we've all seen that. I mean, I have people in my life that I know that I'm like, gosh, it's like you're always attracting similar situations, or you're always getting in the same similar fights with certain people, or, and that of course can be just patterns that we're going through, but it can also just be sometimes the way we, reflect back, or the way we talk to somebody because we're expecting them maybe to be a certain way. Maybe the person who thinks everybody is mean goes into the restaurant thinking that, and so treats the waiter that way, and so the waiter treats them badly, treats them not so well. And that being said, sometimes the issue I have with that though is, it's kind of like the chicken and the egg thing. Like, did that person have those bad perceptions, let's say, of the world, and start off like that, and then the experiences got reflected back to him because those were his beliefs? Or in a way, did he have those beliefs because he had bad experiences and he had people that were mean and had experiences that were evil? And for sure, that's always something that we're kind of working with, I guess, is how to deal with our past experiences so that they don't keep influencing us or having us, feel the same way. And I definitely am working on this a lot, in the sense that I'm very much trying to be conscious of what I believe and my perception of things, because I can see how it can really just change your view or change your reality. But I still have issues with it on other levels because, how do you explain, let's say, like a baby who gets cancer? A baby that's less than a year old has no consciousness, nothing, doesn't even know what cancer means. How can his beliefs or attract that? And somebody might say, well, yeah, well then in that case it's the parents that's projecting onto the kid, or that basically there's like something like that. And maybe that's the case, but still I sometimes feel like there's something kind of wrong there. And also I find that the problem with that kind of thinking sometimes is that I feel like it means that there's some kind of blame, or I start to feel guilty, let's say, when things are not going so well. I start to feel guilty, and I'm like, gosh, something must be wrong with me. Something must be problematic in my life or my way of thinking to be always attracting this problem. And it's almost like, you start almost kind of shaming the victim or blaming the victim. And that can happen, let's say, with like people who get sick. And in a way, it's like, well, you attracted your reality. But, it's just kind of like placing blame or something on them even more to what they're dealing with. And, to a certain extent, sometimes like I wonder, like even about the pandemic or something, I'm like, well, damn it, did I do this? Like, am I the one who caused the pandemic? Or other things like that. And, sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, we're just living in a kind of simulation or something. And maybe at the end of all this, I'm going to take off my headset and be like, and all my friends around me are going to be laughing at my version of my Sims. It's like, ha 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 ha, like, you, like, what happened to you in this version of the game? You created a pandemic and maybe even like a civil war. I mean, look at what's going on in the world right now. Sometimes it's like, just seems to be a lot of turmoil. And yeah, sometimes I start wondering, like, oh my gosh, like, why am I kind of like attracting that type of thing? And of course, I know we have a collective consciousness that we're all dealing with, and that there's like, collective beliefs and fears and ways of viewing the society that also influence, everybody's kind of reality. But yeah, I mean, I also do see how, even let's say with like everything that's going on in the world, it's true that you can see different ways of perceiving things and how that changes your reality about them or your feeling about them. And, I actually always loved this one sentence that I read in a book. I think it was You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And I know it was Louise Hay, but I just can't remember which book it was. But she was just mentioning something that really stuck to me, which was, you have a belief about something, and if you don't change that belief, it's just going to follow you around. And so she takes the example of somebody who hates their job or their car. She uses both. And she's just like, if the person hates their car and hates their job, then it's just going to, they might find another job or they might change cars. But if they don't change that kind of very ingrained belief, it's just going to stay with them. And so they might change cars. And yes, for sure, for the first 6 months or so, and same with the job, for the first 6 months or so, you might really like your job again. But then eventually, it just comes back and you hate your car for different reasons, of course. It's not going to be the same car and you're not going to hate it for the same reasons. Same thing for the job. It might be somebody else, another coworker, or like you attracted the same kind of coworker thing. And I've actually seen that firsthand. I had a couple of friends who recently changed jobs because they really didn't like their work environment and their colleagues. One of them especially just kept thinking that, he was basically doing everything and wasn't getting credit for it. And then he changed jobs. And yeah, like I'd say for maybe the first couple months, he was pretty happy there. But that same feeling came back. And he, basically same feeling, different situation, different setup, different colleagues, but same initial feeling. And my thing though is that I always find that just so kind of complicated to get your head around. Like, because Louise Hay was saying, well, in order to actually get a car that you really want, that you're going to actually end up loving for the whole time, you have to start loving the car you don't like. And that's what I want to talk about, because it's actually something that I kind of at the beginning didn't really understand, but I just followed the teachings with, like, not blindly, but I just followed them, kind of somebody saying like, okay, try this out. And that was practicing gratitude. And at the time, just a lot of things in my life were not going so well, and I just really wanted to change a lot of them. But I did start practicing gratitude, and I started doing things like, jotting down 3 things at the end of the day that I really was grateful for. And the interesting thing that started to happen was, kind of like in Louise Hay's example, is that my life didn't change, but my perception of it did. I did start feeling more grateful for things. I did start feeling more at peace with certain things. I kind of let go of certain elements. And I realized that in a way, by practicing the gratitude, it just kind of shifted my perspective. So kind of like in that example of the person who thinks that life is horrible and that people are horrible, objectively it's the same world or structure. But if you change your perception of it, it's not like you're changing the world, but somehow your world does change. And I realized that I'm still aiming to change some of the things I didn't like at that point in my life. Like, let's say, my job or just other things in my life that were just not seeming to work. But at the same time, I'm living through them in a different way now. So yes, I still want to change them, but I'm still somehow not angry with them anymore or not frustrated with them in the same way. And so I'm, in a way, happier. And it's funny how just that small little shift, that change in kind of the habit of doing basically the gratefulness practice had such a huge impact. And I couldn't believe how it was something so simple. And I must admit, I felt afterwards that I started kind of like maybe the person who starts to see that life is a wonderful thing and that life is working towards you, for you. I started realizing that things were kind of happening for me. And yeah, those were the reflections I wanted to have today. And there's no answers. I still sometimes don't really always know how comfortable I feel with saying that everything is everybody's kind of responsibility. Maybe because I'm not wanting to take responsibility for everything. Maybe that's still part of my victim mindset, kind of poking its head out. Or maybe it's also just because both truths are true. Anyway, on that, I'm sending you all lots of love and lots of laughter, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.